Welcome back to 3-Point Firefighter. Today, my guest is Nick Peppard. Now, Nick is a 16-year student of the craft, currently a captain at Holley-Navarre Fire District in Santa Rosa County, Florida. I believe that's in a Panhandle, right? Am I right about that? It is. Okay. Yep. You're assigned to Engine Company 41. If you didn't know, you could look at the hat. He's also a paramedic with Lifeguard Ambulance Service. He's an adjunct instructor. He's the owner-operator of North Florida Fire and EMS Training, LLC. And he's got more degrees than a rectal thermometer. Let's say you got you got degrees in fire science and EMS technology, and then you got another one. And which one is that one? The Associate of Arts?
That's just a general studies, AA. All
right, cool. I got that. And he's currently working on his bachelor's degree program at Waldorf University. So you're thinking, okay, we know Mr. Peppard, no problem. Got him. Wait, there's more. Okay. Have you heard of a little something called the North Florida Fire Expo? Because boom, he's a president of that. You're thinking, okay, between all the degrees and the adjunct teaching, he's done. You're done with his intro. Nope. We got more. He's also the co-host of Make Do Suburban Fireman Podcast with Sean Duffy of Build Your Culture. Okay. Everybody's listening to, okay, now we can get on with the interview. Wait, there's even more. He's a vice president of Local 4695, recently published author with Fire Engineering with a fantastic article we're going to talk about. He's crazy passionate about training, helping others, and he does everything he can to fulfill his oath to serve and protect them. Brother Nick, how are you?
Doing well, brother. Thanks for having me on the show.
Man, I got to open her up with a little sponsorship read. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right. And I kind of want to do it like a strip club DJ. Is that okay with you?
Hey,
perfect.
It's your show, brother. I'm good with it.
Good. All right. Well, today's podcast was sponsored by Fire Facilities Incorporated, expert engineers, designers, and manufacturers of steel training towers, burn rooms, and mobile units that are all made in the USA. 2-for-1 Bud Lights coming to the center stage. Crystal Chandelier. Oh, thanks for indulging me in that. I've been wanting to get that out of my system for a long time. Brother Nick, glad to have you on here. You do a little bit of everything, and I don't know how you have time to do my podcast tonight looking at all this stuff. How do you do it?
I'm a busybody, man. I don't, sometimes I have to look at my calendar and just stay on task. But honestly, man, I love the job. I've been fortunate to kind of get my hands in a lot of stuff through the years. And I feel like just stuff, is just kind of added a little here, a little there, kind of started out with one or two things. Then it's just kind of one or two things became one or two more things. And so,
yes.
I think most firemen in the job that are, plugged in, always seem to take on a little extra, probably to my wife's credit, she's probably put up with more than she probably should.
So she gets to see you. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I'm home right now, so that's a plus.
That is quite a resume. It's impressive, and it's all obviously geared for helping and serving those that pay our bills, man, right? You're there to save the citizens. And you've got it's so wide range. It's like, I don't know, when you look at it, the bigger picture is you're huge on education, obviously, and you're passionate about training. How did you get to there? How did, young Captain Nick become this current Captain Nick?
Well, I was pretty hungry coming on the job. I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground, but I was green. I was 18 years old, man, just trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And, I was fortunate to get on the job early. I got in the fire academy right out of high school. I got picked up by a local fire department over in Okaloosa County. Again, didn't know anything. I'm green as, is all get out. And I was fortunate. My first captain was real big on, on training, real big on, the family environment of the fire service. And that kind of just instilled in me a little bit of, sense of purpose and drive. However, there's a saying that you don't know what you don't know. I knew my little world of the fire service, and it just kind of transformed from, I kind of got into a rut, comfortable about 3 years in.
That was my next question. Go ahead, please continue.
Yeah. So I got comfortable, I got where I was like, okay, I could do this, and I had a couple classes, I took some pump op classes because, doing step up driving and stuff. And I got complacent, and I got kind of, I overestimated my own abilities, I think, a little bit, back then. And so, fast forward, I ended up taking a job with my current department now, and was basically, it was a brand new career department. They were transitioning from volunteer and part-time staff to full-time staff. So was a charter member of our local here, and came over, worked the first shift, ran the first call as a career department. It was kind of cool.
Oh yeah.
But it was very, humble starts, 2 guys on a truck, big response areas. And, I went from a backseat fireman to, that drove out of class every once in a while to, I was basically hired as a firefighter / driver, because we only had the, driver and the officer on the rig back then. Mm-hmm. And so learned some stuff along the way, ended up a few years in, I think, making lieutenant, and way too young. Really? I honestly, I got in that position, and, I was 20, I want to say 23 when I made lieutenant, 5 years on the job, had a few, I had my FO, my FO1 classes, and, I was like, I thought I was doing a pretty good job, but I got in that seat and realized like how much I felt like I had missed by being kind of fast tracked into a position out of necessity. And so probably about, it was like, I want to say 4 years in, 3-4 years in, I started kind of longing to go to a bigger, busier system and just ride tailboard and get experience, and I ended up going over to the Tallahassee Fire Department, which is about 3 hours down the road to the east of us, state capital, slightly bigger job. They're at 16 firehouses, roughly 300 personnel, but an older city that had a decent amount of firework. And so I made the transition. I went from riding the engine boss over here in Navarre, went over to Tallahassee, and got some good experiences out of it. I really, the turning point in my career, though, at that point, up to that point, I was pretty cocky.
How many years in is this that you're still cocky?
So I was probably at this point, I was 7-8 years in to the job. I felt like I had it kind of figured out. I, had gone to, gone to the classes that everybody's, you're supposed to for those positions, and all the state classes, and done, extra trainings here and there locally, but hadn't really got outside of my bubble per se. I'm still in the panhandle, and got over there and had a couple experiences that really humbled me and kind of woke me up, I guess. One experience in particular was Memorial Day, and 2011. I just got off probation at Tallahassee, I believe, or right in that point in time when I was coming off probation, feeling pretty good about myself. And it was one of the very first shifts I got moved from the engine to the truck for the shift, because we have a new guy that came on. So they slid me over to the truck. And of course I'm thinking, yeah, man, I'm, riding on the ladder, man, I'm excited. And we caught a fire at shift change, and pretty good job, old house, stick built, not lightweight, and started in the kitchen. Kitchen was rolling. It had it's like a 1.5 kind of, it was a kind of off grade house. So there was multiple areas where step down steps, but areas where it stepped back up, and then you had like a loft over the kitchen area. So we were of course right behind the engine, and the engine took the first line, made fire attack, and of course we went to primary search. And we got told by, that there might be somebody inside, but there was really no confirmation. And up to this point in my career, I've been to several fires where, possible entrapment, you get in there and there's nobody in there, to come and find out they're already out. And so I've never been on a fire where someone had actually been inside the house fire. And so we went and do primary search. I'm going through the motions, honest to God. We started a left-hand search. The engine went right to the kitchen. We went left, kind of searching away from the line. And we got pretty deep into the back. It was a good size house. And we had searched the Alpha Bravo quadrant, and we're working our way back to the Charlie side. Visibility's complete like crap. Can't see nothing, zero visibility. Decent, heat wasn't terrible, but I mean, it was, you could tell it needed to be vented. So we get into this back kind of a party room. We didn't know it was a party room at the time. It was just like a little living room. But when we made the threshold of the door. I went left, and there was a couch, and I started sweeping the couch. And my captain went right in the room, kind of did a quick sweep. And when I got to the couch, I'm sweeping the couch, and I hear him yell, "Hey, I got a victim." And it was like that moment, like, wait, what? There was that pause, like, say what? He's like, "I've got a victim." And so I was like, oh shit, like it's time to like do work, like for real. And so as they say, shit just got real. That was, my heart rate went from like pretty manageable, probably, doing moderate work, searching at about 100 beats a minute to probably 180. I was definitely an SVT. So, I'm like, okay, cool. No big deal. Right. So we're pretty deep in the building, and we're thinking, we don't want to drag this guy. This guy's like 6 foot, 6'4", 6'5", like 240 plus, 250 plus.
Of course.
Right? He's slimy. He's not wearing really much in the way of clothes. He had a pair of pants on, I think, but his upper body's slimy and from, all the soot and all the stuff, and so we go to move this guy. And in my head, before this point, we always train with the mannequins in the burn building. And I've got this plan, I'm going to use my webbing, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And so he goes, "Hey, I need to find a different way out. We're closer to the back of the building than we are the front. We're not going to drag this guy all the way back the way we just came." Because at this point, when we found this guy, we've been searching for a good 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. So we've been after it for a minute, and he's like, we're not going to drag him back through all this crap out the front door. Like, let's just take him out the back of the building. Well, he crawls ahead. He's like, "Hey, just start dragging this guy." He starts crawling ahead, trying to find a way out. Of course, we need ventilation. We're the only 2 crews operating at this point. I believe we just had the 3 of us on the truck that day and 3 on the engine. So staffing, wasn't, stellar. I mean, with 6 dudes doing work, the engine's doing tack, and we're doing search. And of course, the driver is the only guy outside on the truck, and the engine driver, of course. And so we're trying to get them to coordinate some ventilation, so we can see what the hell we're doing at this point. So I go to grab this guy, and I sit him up. And of course, it's not like any mannequin I've ever, handled. And this guy's a limp noodle. And of course, so now I'm working, like trying to get this guy just to prop him up a little bit. And so I go to pull my webbing out, and that plan A went to hell in a handbasket pretty quick. My webbing came untied. My loop came untied. I ended up getting it all tangled up, and I end up losing it. And at this point, I'm like, screw this. I'm just going to pick this guy up and go, because clearly the webbing plan A is not working like I thought it was going to work. So I go to pick this guy up. Well, he's so big. I'm only 5'10". So most of his legs are on the ground. And I don't know exactly where I'm going, other than I'm trying to go as far back as I can go. I get him to the stairs. There's about 4 or 5 steps going up to this next little room where it steps back up in the back of the house. And I'm breathing pretty hard, my cab's like, "Hey, I think there's a door out this Charlie side in the very, very back here." So I'm trying to get this guy up the stairs by myself. And I must have tripped 4 times trying to get him up the steps, as I'm have to constantly reposition and move this guy, get him up the steps. And I'm, at this point, I'm pretty gassed, right? My adrenaline initial rush is starting to peter. I'm fatigued. I'm 20 minutes into, my low air alarm's going off on my bottle. As is my captain's, and we're still in this building.
Right.
And so now the clock's ticking in my head. Right. So I'm like, I still don't know exactly where we're going. And my low air alarm's going off, and this guy's kicking my ass, and my captain crawls back. "Hey, there's a door. They got another crew now on scene. They're coming to the Charlie side. They're going to help us. Once we get them to the door, they'll take care of the patient from there." So my heart rate's through the roof, man. I am absolutely just digging deep at this point. Like, and he gets down there, and the 2 of us kind of start pulling on this guy. And we're moving, but we're moving. It's slow going, right? A couple feet here, a couple, we pull a couple feet, reposition, pull a couple feet. And we're moving this guy out the back of this room, which ended up being from the stairs to the door was only probably maybe, 30, 35 feet. Okay. So we ended up moving the guy a total of probably 50, maybe 55 feet through this house, up half set of stairs. And we start pulling this guy out. I can see light now. I'm getting closer to the door, and I can see where the third unit on scene, was the second due engine, had come around the back, and they had basically forced the door on the Charlie side. And we're hearing reports, the engine's got a knock on the fire, smoke starting to lift a little bit more. We're starting to see, I think they end up getting some ventilation eventually. So we started to be able to see a little bit more, but we're still, I'd say smoke, had lifted probably 2 feet off the floor. So there's still quite a bit of smoke, but we could at least lay low and kind of see the door. So we're crawling with this guy. And like I said, at this point, I'm like, my low air alarm, the bell had stopped actually dinging. Okay. So I'm basically out of air. I've got a couple breaths left. We get about probably 8 to 10 feet from the door. And, it's getting harder to breathe. I get about a couple more feet, and my mask sucks to my face. So I'm out of air. And his bell has stopped going off at this point, my captain's. So I know we're both like really, really close. Long story short, we basically, I ended up having to take my regulator out of my mask and just stay low and drag this guy out the last 6-7 feet to the door where the waiting engine company was coming around. As we're coming out the door with this guy, they come around, pick him up, and of course start initiating care. And my heart rate was so high, and I was so like, the anxiety level at this point where like my mask is stuck to my face, and I'm trying to, like, the dexterity is gone. Right. I've struggled to get my regulator out. I got it out. And I got to the point where when we got outside the building, they took the patient, and my captain and I kind of just took a knee on the grass, and I'm trying to take my helmet off. Right. And I can't, my dexterity, my fingers are like this. They're basically, I don't have the dexterity because my heart rate's so high to undo my helmet strap. And I'm struggling. I can't get my helmet off. I can't get, I'm trying to get my mask loosened up just so I can breathe, because I'm still feeling like I'm breathing through a straw at this point because I'm literally out of breath. And another crew came around and actually had to help us take the stuff off so I could breathe and kind of catch myself. And so we got done with that. And they end up flying that guy to down to Gainesville from Tallahassee to Shands. And there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened that transpired. The guy ended up living. It was kind of cool. So he ended up living. We went to his birthday party like 6 months later. Pretty cool.
Did you punch him in the face for being so damn big and
oh
in the middle
my
of the house?
bro. So the whole time, like the whole time I'm cussing, like, man, like, but we got out there, and so like we're done with the incident, right? As far as they pretty much pulled us as like, look, y'all go to rehab. You've done your job. Like, go to rehab. So I'm sitting there trying to like regain my feeling in my fingertips, and guys are coming up after the incident, patting us on the back and good job, brothers. And I just remember like going back to the firehouse and like playing this incident over and over in my head. Right. They're telling me good job. And you did, you guys kicked ass and all that stuff. But in my mind, I was like, man, I didn't kick ass. Like in my mind, I was like, it took way longer than it should have. My plan A and B didn't work. Like, I literally almost died in here because we literally ran out of air. I mean, had we had to go another 20, 30 feet, we would have been in really bad trouble. We would have been calling a mayday. And so this whole thing's like playing in my head, right? Over and over and over and over and over about just all, what I could have done better. Right. And I realized it was in that moment that I realized like, I was cocky. I was this young kid that, I had a few years on the job. I felt like I knew what I was doing. And all of a sudden I realized like that was way harder than anything I'd ever trained on. That was the real deal was way, way harder. And I realized like how failed my training in a sense wasn't real enough. We're using these stiff ass mannequins and doing all this fancy elaborate crap with webbing and all this other stuff. And like, I just like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, man, like I thought in my head that I was ready for that moment. And, we had a positive outcome and we got it done. We persevered. We had the grit to get through it. But I was like, man, I wanted to be better than that. I didn't want to be, I didn't want to ever experience that again. I didn't want to have that moment where I was like, God, I literally, I felt like the guy, I told several people this. I felt like the guy survived in spite of us, not because of us. And I know that sounds really messed up and it's a positive outcome and we did our job,
Yeah.
But I felt like I was not batting, how I should have been. I was subpar in my performance in my own mind. Like I criticized and beat myself up for several days after this incident because I was like, man, I felt like I would have been better. I felt like I should have been better. I felt like I should have been, more oriented to the building. And, I looked back and there was windows literally 10 feet from where we found the guy. We just never took the time to identify windows and go out the window. There was just a lot of little things that I picked apart, and guys said, "Oh, don't sweat the small stuff, man. You got it done, blah, blah, blah." But it just ate at me. It ate at me to the point where I was like, man, I gotta find something to make me better. I gotta find something like to get outside of my comfort zone, get outside my bubble. So what I ended up doing was, I ended up getting invited to, I think it was the second year that MAFC, the Metro Atlanta Firefighters Conference, had been running. It was small back then. And Kurt Isaacson had actually invited me to come up there, him and Shannon Stone. And they're like, "Hey, man, you should really come check this out, man." Like, and you got to remember back then, there wasn't a whole lot of regional conferences like there are now.
Yeah.
There was Orlando had just started back then. MAFC had just started, but there wasn't really, none of the stuff was going on in Pensacola Beach like we have now, all the resources we have now with Chief Ike stuff and all these different conferences that are popping up across the country. Back then it was like FDIC, Firehouse Expo, and, Fire East down here in Florida was like the three big, conference things if you want to go to a conference. But I, of course I couldn't afford on the fireman's salary back then. I was rubbing pennies together trying to hoping I could pay the bills. We just weren't getting paid that much. So like for me to spend like $2,000 to go to FDIC was just like insane. I couldn't do that, and so it was one of those things, like I had never really been outside my bubble. I never really been pushed like that. And it was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call to be better. So I went to MAFC not knowing what to expect. I got up there, and this is really like the turning point, I feel like, in my career. This is the point where I got up there and realized like I'm with like a couple hundred other like-minded brothers that are just passionate about the job. They're into the job. They're and I don't know these guys from Adam other than Chief Ike and Shannon Stone, some guys from the Panhandle that went up there. Like I didn't know these guys from anybody, but I'm up there and I'm meeting guys, Dustin Martinez and all these guys that are, this is years ago, of course. And I didn't know who these guys were, but all I knew is they were speaking a language that I could, correlate with. I could kind of, I felt a kindred spirit. I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, and I was hooked. That was it. That was the first conference I ever went to, other than like a FPF conference, like the union stuff, which is a whole different animal. I had never been to a training conference, a fire conference like that. And I came back on cloud nine, man. I was excited. I was pumped up. I quickly found out that many on my job were not as excited as I was.
That's the harsh reality, isn't it?
Yeah. So here I am. I'm pumped up. It was really a shot in the arm for me. I'm excited, and I come back and I got a lot of resistance in bringing stuff back, and I look back now, and I definitely think that I probably wasn't as wasn't as tactful as I could have been with some of the stuff. I was like, man, this is the way we need to do it. Like, and of course, so here starts a whole nother calamity of personality conflict. Because here's this, in their eyes, a 2-year fireman, right? I'd only been on the job for a year and a half or whatever. I'm all pumped up. Collectively, I'd been on the job for, like right at 7 years or whatever it was, 7, 8 years, ballpark-ish. But in my mind, I've got almost a decade on the job. Like, I'm excited. I feel like people, everybody should want to hear this, right? This is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So I come back and I'm trying to get other guys to go, and I'm getting pushed back, and I'm getting, I got wore out, man. I got wore out over there. And, and part of it's probably my own fault for being, maybe a little over the top with like pushy, like, we need to do this. And so long story short, I started going to conferences. I started kind of getting out and reading trade journals. When I was a rookie, I read a lot of fire engineering, Firehouse magazine stuff, but it'd been a few years since I picked up the magazines, right? It'd been a few years since I was really had that spark, and so that conference kind of reignited that spark, and that spark kind of started growing. And I got really, really passionate about training. Like I'd go out there by myself, man, for 2-3 hours in the bay, and I would just I made my own little makeshift like hose, bed that I would pull hose. I practice stretching, practice throwing ladders, practice mask ups, and all this stuff that, I was like, man, it just, and so that's kind of where my love for training started, was after that incident, going up to MAFC, because I was pretty down on myself up to that point, right? That happened, and in the following year, so for a year, I basically was kind of like, man, I don't know, man, I need to do more, but I was hungry. I wanted to know what I needed to do. So I started reading and looking around. And that's when that, the following year when I went to that conference is what kind of really took me over the edge, where I was like, okay, this is what I need to start. I need to do this at least a couple of times a year to kind of recharge my batteries. And so I started asking questions, man. I started talking to guys and started building relationships and finding guys that I had kind of common thread with. And long story short, with all that, I got really fired up about training. I started going to all these conferences, started, really getting engaged, like really, dialing in. And an opportunity, I did about 5.5 years in Tallahassee. And at this point, I'm still in young fireman mode. And so I'm trying to go bigger, man. I want to be in the middle of the busiest firehouse in the state, man, like whatever, I'm looking for opportunities to grow. And so I tested with Hillsborough County Fire down in Tampa. And, anybody knows anything about Hillsborough, they're a pretty large job, metropolitan job. I think they're at 45 houses now. Oh, like wow. 1,100 dudes. It's a big department, man. They run a ton of calls. They're running like 120,000-130,000 calls a year. It's crazy busy. But I thought I hit the jackpot. And honestly, as a fireman, I did. They train a lot. They're a great department. I was in heaven as a fireman. However, so keep in mind, my wife had married me. I was in the job up here in Navarre. We'd moved to Tallahassee. We had my daughter in Tallahassee. She was little. She was, 2, coming up on 3 years old. We moved to Tampa. Well, we come down to Tampa, and the week that I got in orientation for Hillsborough, I found out my wife's pregnant again. So long story short, we had my son down there. I'm happy as can be as a fireman. However, the family life was a struggle, and it was one of those things where I'm plugged in with training. I'm on the job. I love the job, but we didn't have any support. We're in a big city. We have no support. There's no family, no friends, other than the people we just met on a fireman's salary, which, I was getting paid more than I was in Tallahassee because South Florida tends to pay a little bit more, but it's expensive living down there. And so we're scraping by. I'm picking up all these overtime shifts, got a second job. And so I'm never home. So she's got a toddler and a newborn at the house, and I'm not home. And my station, if I was at my own station, commuting was about 45 minutes, maybe an hour from where we lived. But if I got like TDY to the south end of the county, it's like a 3-hour drive with traffic. It's like 3 hours to commute. It's terrible. So it was because traffic's so bad on I-75, I-4 and all that stuff down there, man. It's like, I didn't really count that in, but so it wasn't like she could just take the kids and come see me. Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at, I'm on a fireman salary. We're scraping by, we're trying to acclimate to a new area. And it just started wearing on the marriage a little bit, where we were kind of struggling. We came back up for Thanksgiving to visit my parents. My parents live up here. My brother's on the job up here with us. So I had some family, a lot of friends from early back in the days, a lot of guys that, I call brothers and friends. And the schools here are great, man. It's a little bit smaller area, obviously, so the traffic's not bad. I mean, schools are A+ schools. Like, there's a lot of good, on the family side of things, like really, really positive things.
Ain't it right near Pensacola?
Yeah, we're east of Pensacola, about 30 minutes. We're right here on the coast. So next county over is where we're at. But the whole thing.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, brother.
No, well, I was just gonna say, you mentioned a couple names earlier. In the Panhandle, there's quite a few heavy hitters like yourself in there.
I've been very blessed, man. We've got some really, really solid fire departments around here. Some really solid, like, guys that just get it. The culture here is overall is really, really good. There's some guys that really are into training that push our area forward. I think I feel like I'm kind of building on the foundation that the guys before me built, the Kurt Isaacsons, the Shannon Stones, DJ Stone, guys like that, that just have put a lot of time into the fire service locally, and it definitely helped, influence the culture, I think, locally. So I kind of grew up in that. I grew up in, in the early days before there were CFT conferences and stuff like that. And, it was different, but these guys were beating the drum long before me, and I didn't realize how fortunate I was until I was isolated away from it. Like how many, good fire departments there are up here, and just really good, firefighters. And so we came up here to visit and for Thanksgiving, and I had a friend of mine was like, hey man, we're testing. The department I work for has only been career department since 2008. So I started in Okaloosa County in 2005. I came over to Navarre as one of the first paid guys when they went career. So it's a pretty young department, as far as career department goes, relatively speaking. So that being said, they didn't really have a lot of the young guys that had come in were, very inexperienced, as a whole. There's only, I think, maybe one or two guys that were even considered for, they had a couple drivers positions come open. Some guys had gone to bigger departments, and so they're like, hey, we don't, this is not the ideal thing. Obviously you'd like to promote from within, but at the time they really didn't have a lot of candidates to promote from within. So the chief had opened up testing for the engineer position. And at this point, the department had grown a little bit. They weren't running, two guys on the truck all the time. They had, 3-man crews and stuff. And we're kind of in that transition to get staffing up and whatnot. But anyway, so I came up and I talked to them. They're like, man, if, you should put in, just, if you're really thinking about moving back up here. And because my parents were like, hey, you guys seem really happy up here. Like, Ashley's happy, and the kids seem to have a little bit more support, and schools are good and everything. So we talked about it, and I was like, man, you know what? Why not? Why not just put in, see what happens, test. If I don't get it, it's not a big deal. But it's like, I've got experience. I was up here before, before I went to Tallahassee. I did, several years up here, 4 years up here before I left the first time. So I had some familiarity with the area. I knew the guys, I knew the chief. And, I knew a lot of the guys that were there from originally. So it was one of those things we tested, and I got offered the position, and I kind of hit the ground running, man. It was a big transition. Obviously it was a big decision. I kind of had to make a decision between what's best for me personally in my career, which, like I said, as a fireman in Hillsborough, I was having a blast. I was running a crap ton of calls, going to jobs, doing fireman stuff, and I loved it. But like I said, I had to make a decision between that and what was best for Nick Peppard and what was best for, my family, my wife and kids. And so we made the decision. We sat down and talked about it. It's like, we want to make sure that there's support, that there's, that you have support, that, we can actually go on date nights every once in a while, and, and being a smaller town, obviously it's easy to come see me with the kids and bring the kids by the firehouse. And so we did it. We made the leap. And I got a lot of people question, like, why would you do that? You went from a huge metro department to, back up in the Panhandle, smaller department. And, the bottom line is it just, it was a family decision, personal decision. And, it's worked out good that my kids are happy. My parents live right up the road. They're 10 minutes up the road. Great schools, all the people that I've known for years and years and years, people that helped me cut my teeth in the fire service are up here. So it's been really good on that front. But anyway, came back up, started as driver. My time on the job at this point, I'm double digits, I've been out on the job a little bit, and have, of course, at this point, certification class, stuff like that. And ended up testing for lieutenant about a little over 3 years ago, and got promoted to lieutenant. And then from there, we had a restructuring, so I became a captain. So yeah. I tell people I didn't actually promote to captain. I got reclassified my job position. So
did your wife tell you no more moving? That's it.
Yeah. Well, that was the disclaimer. So, but yeah, she kind of, but honestly, it's been good. Like I said, I'm very fortunate. My brother's on our department. He works on our B watch up here on the other end of the district. Very, very fortunate to have, the people in my life. I've been fortunate to to meet. And through all that, I was still going to conferences the whole time, got to start going to FDIC and Firehouse Expo and some of these places and meeting even more people. And it was probably about 4 years ago, someone had mentioned to me, is like, man, why don't you think about teaching? Why don't you got your instructor stuff, like you've been on the job for a dozen years, right? Or so, like, why don't you think about teaching? And, I gave it some thought, and I was like, man, you mean the fire academy? And so, well, yeah, put it for the fire academy, see what happens. So that's how I ended up putting in. I got picked up in the fire academy up here at Northwest Florida State College. But I also, I realized, like, I kind of really, I liked the hands-on stuff at like fire conferences. I really enjoyed that. And so there's a little conference down in Fort Myers that had a call for instructors. And I was like, you know what, just on a whim, I just happened to see it on the fire college website. And so I put in, and not really knowing what to expect, but I wanted to do something I really cared about at the time, which I was a driver back then. And so I put together a class called Left Seat Tips and Tactics. And basically all the hard knocks, the things that I learned the hard way, or stuff that I wish somebody had taught me as a driver, is kind of what it was based on. And I got accepted, much to my surprise. I got accepted to teach this class, not knowing what the hell I was getting myself into. And so here I am. Me and my best friend Mike, we go down to Fort Myers. I was like, hey man, you want to help me teach this class? Cool. All right. What are we doing? Okay. And he's a driver. He's a lieutenant with us. Our lieutenants are drivers that are step up officers in our department. So Mike and I go down here to South Florida, and hell, I just want to be a student, man. I want to sit in on all these classes. So we teach this class, and we end up having like a pretty full class. There's like 25, 30 people in this class. I'm nervous as hell, man. And so I had this like little 2-hour lecture I put together, and the rest was all hands-on. So I did a lecture one day, and I was doing hands-on the next day. Well, the third and fourth days, I was like, I just want to be a student. So I was like, hey, can I jump in some classes here? They're like, yeah, man, jump in. So did the class. Everybody seemed to really like it. And we had several of those aha moments with students that just made it like, I felt that's when I kind of fell in love with, like, I've been in love with training for years. Like, I got that spark back in Tallahassee, and like really was passionate. But I didn't really know how I would do teaching until I had that experience. And that was kind of the next light bulb moment for me, where I was like, man, I really enjoy this. I enjoy helping people learn and grow and get better, and, learn from my mistakes and try to, teach things that I learned the hard way, that, things that I wish that others had taught me. So that was kind of the start of really teaching for me. And while I was down there, there's another cat down there teaching a class that I just happened to slide in his class just as a student, because I was like, hey, I'm here for a couple extra days. His name was Sean Duffy.
The man himself.
Yeah. So Sean Duffy was down there teaching a search class. And here I am. I don't know this guy. I didn't know anything about him. And he's down there doing this class. And so we jump in on the search class, and I had a blast, man. I'm doing fireman stuff. I'm a student. This it's like the third day. I'm a student. I'm like, I'm good. I'm happy. I'm excited. And we get talking in break time between sets and stuff, and kind of strike up a conversation and have really good conversation, man. Really engaged, and we kind of from that spawned a friendship, and we started kind of talking on the phone a little bit, and like, hey man, what's going on? So he's like, hey, if you're interested in teaching, is there some other opportunities coming up you should really put in for? So I started kind of putting in for some conferences and stuff, and I got picked up by a couple. I got some no letters too, saying thanks but no thanks. But I was very fortunate. I got picked up to get to teach a few places, and I just, like I said, it just kind of snowballed into. Then we got talking one day. We're like, hey man, like, you want to do a podcast together? I was like, sure, that sounds like something cool, right? All these guys are doing podcasts. Like, hey, let's do. So we got on a rant one day about doing stuff like you go to. Someone had mentioned something about like you go to this big conference, and like this guy from FDNY or Chicago, and they're teaching this stuff but they got 5-6 dudes on a truck, and 40 dudes on scene in the first 10 minutes, and like it's just guys getting frustrated because they come back in their department, and guys like, well, we can't do that because there's like 2 dudes on a rig, and so we got talking about all, the issues that, the rest of us face. There's the big urban departments that have all the resources, then there's the rest of us, right? And so we got talking about some of the struggles where we still have to execute the same tactics, but sometimes we have to modify things a little bit, and the timing is a little different with the suburban setting. So from that stemmed the Make Do Suburban Fireman concept, which was like, hey, let's talk about what challenges, like tactics specifically, culture, tactics, issues that the suburban fire service faces versus, not from an urban centric mindset, not because you can learn a lot of great stuff. There's some fantastic, man. I mean, Ray McCormick, Mike Champ, all these guys, like so much good information. I've learned so much, and I owe a lot of what I've, know to guys like that. But what we found is like, you go to places and a lot of guys are like, man, I'm working in this 2-3 station department, man. I don't have all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And guys get discouraged because like, how do we do this? And what got going on the concept was, we kind of go down that road was we were talking about search, right? BES, a lot of smaller departments, like, oh, we can't BES, we don't have staffing. And so that kind of snowballed until we're like, we had like a 3-hour conversation one day. Sean's wife and my wife, like, Caitlin and Ashley, God bless them, because we would go on these like 2-3 hour like bromance conversations. I swear, like we're just talking, like having a good time, shooting shit, walking around in the yard, and she come out like 3 hours later, like, are you coming in? And so yeah. My wife would give me shit, man. She'd like, I swear you talk to him more than you talk to me. And so we just, we'd be out there just shooting the shit, talking shop, man, getting all fired up about stuff. And so we finally put it together and started doing the podcast and the expo. That's a whole nother ball of wax. I know there's I'm going a lot of different directions, but
no, it's fine, because you know what you're hitting everything I want to know about. And you're obviously you're a podcaster, man. You're flowing it. Everything's flowing into it. I love it. It's awesome. I mean, you're getting me all excited. I do want to ask you a couple things real quick. You mentioned earlier. So you mentioned rescuing the guy out of the house, the 9-foot guy that was 700 miles from the door, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly 701 miles.
701 miles, but you had your regulator out for that last mile. That was
right.
No, but I'm curious because you said you felt like, okay, so I think most firemen that I know, firefighters, would have chalked that up as a win, but your mindset of you knew you could do something different and better. So you got reignited, going to conferences. When you look back on that one particular incident, what have you done what would you have told young Nick in that situation that you know now? What would you say? Would you say, hey, you need to work out more, or you need to have a plan C and D? Conserve your air. What would be that thing you would tell yourself in that old situation?
Yeah. First things first, yes. Work out more. Yes. Make your training more realistic, push yourself in training, put yourself in situations where you're uncomfortable in training. Don't do the same thing over and over. Right. So be fluid. And I think that one of the big takeaways I took away from that experience was, sometimes we get all these elaborate plans in our mind and they don't really pan out under stress.
Right.
I.e. the webbing thing. Since then, I do still carry webbing because there are times where it is definitely useful, but more often than not, now when we train for search, we train on dirty drags. We train on, extremity drags, things that, just using our body mechanics. Mm-hmm. And because my webbing failed, right? My plan A that I thought was going to be the great solution failed miserably. And what we found, the more I started pushing myself and training realistically, especially getting guys say, hey man, go lay on the floor. I'm going to try to drag you, of course, find the new guy because the old guy's like, you ain't dragging me across the bay floor, but
I don't know who you're getting, but I know who you're not getting.
Right. And so I started, trying stuff out, man, and reading, and I was like, and the more I got comfortable being uncomfortable, the better, I started to grasp the concept that, look, when you're under stress and your heart rate's elevated, the fine motor skills needed to do some of this really technical stuff, and you say, well, it's just webbing. Well, you try to do, a harness pitch black, when your heart rate's through the roof and you're a little, you've already been working for a little bit. And what we found, and a lot of guys, kind of come to the same conclusion. And even a lot of the guys that teach search nowadays, Sean, guys like that, don't use webbing as their go-to, right? Because in the pitch black, when your heart rate's up and your adrenaline's dumping, the fine motor skills sometimes to pull that out of your pocket and try to, make you a hitch, or make you, if you are going to use it, do something real simple, right? Little,
girth hitch and just
girth hitch around the ankles, something like that. All this elaborate stuff of trying to wrap their body and tie this little thing and carabiner and all this stuff. That's great when you can see and you're not on your knees in a burning building. But it doesn't necessarily translate to success in real life when you're in that situation. And so I kind of adopted the keep it simple, stupid approach, and realized I've got to get better using my own body mechanics and doing, fundamental tasks really well under pressure. And so that's one thing I would say to my, older self, saying to my younger self, is get comfortable being uncomfortable, push yourself in training, make it as realistic as possible. Whenever you can, try to use real people when you're doing drags and all that stuff in training, because that's going to be a lot more realistic than using a stiff mannequin. Obviously there's some benefits to the mannequin, just sets and reps, because we can do it over and over, and our body ain't getting rug burns on his back from dragging him 17 times across the floor. But the thing is, we've got to do a better job with as firefighters of seeking out realistic training. And if you're not getting it in your department, that's why, going to fire conference for me was like a godsend. It was just the shot in the arm I needed to get me out and allow me to do some of the things that I wasn't necessarily getting back in my firehouse. Right. So that was one of the things I would say too, is get out of your bubble and get exposed to other ideas, other concepts, get around other like-minded people, because it's easy to get in a rut. It's easy to get bogged down with, the daily grind, if you will, in your firehouse. And it can kill your drive if you get in this rut and you don't look beyond your walls. You see, you kind of see, you don't see the forest because of the trees, kind of thing. You kind of get in that zone where you're just like, oh, this is all I know. This is all I do. And it's monotonous, and I run 17 stub toes a shift, and I might catch a fire once a month. And, you just kind of get in this rut. And that's what had to happen to me, is I got complacent. I got in a rut, and I really didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what I was missing out on. So the takeaways for that was hey, get outside your comfort zone, train like you really mean it, train like it's the real thing. Whenever possible, seek out realistic training, and push yourself during training, because those three things in my mind are kind of, I learned the hard way. And it took me several years to finally look back and recognize my issues, and work through them. So I hope that answers the question, man. I think
it does. It absolutely does. And you also said something about getting, reignited and bringing that passion back. And maybe it wasn't met with the same enthusiasm you had. When it comes to it now, anybody that's out there listening, if you're not a fire instructor, listen to me now, and I bet you Captain Peppard is going to agree with me. Peppard, sorry. I keep thinking that you're the guy from the A-Team, George Peppard, but I don't think you are. I don't think you are. But training,
I live in a bigger house if I was.
if you're teaching your own department, your own people, and then you compare it to you teaching at a conference or outside your own department, two entirely different animals, right? So when you go to teach, to go to conferences or go out to these other classes, those are the people that are the one percenters. They're the ones giving up their weekend for that class, their money, their time with their family, being away from them, to listen to what you have to say, apply what you have to say, and take it back. That's the best case for an instructor. Now, if you're an instructor in your own department, talk to a lot of people, they're like, my department meets me with a little more resistance, because not everybody in your department wants to train. And you find yourself trying to adjust where you don't have to. Does that make sense? Like when you teach outside your department, it's different than teaching your department.
So yeah, there's a passage of scripture that says a prophet's not without honor, save in his own country. Mm-hmm. And that statement is very true. because those people have seen they've seen your screw ups.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen, you on not your best day. They've witnessed that. And not only that, there's always there's some skepticism that comes, oh, look at you going to go out and, teach and tell all these people what's going on or what's up. And so I met some of that. I met that, even as a fireman, when I started kind of pushing for training and stuff, when I was over in Tallahassee, I met quite a bit of resistance from guys that were like, who the hell is this guy, coming in here telling us what we need to do. And like I said, I look back and I regret some of the conversations I allowed myself to kind of go down those rabbit holes, because there's people that literally will just try to pick a fight just to pick a fight. They just want to argue with you. And looking back now, I see, but I was young, I was eager, I was excited, here I was my mid 20s, and I found that spark again, and I just wanted to share it with anybody who would listen.
Right.
And so I was overbearing at times, like just completely overbearing. And I regret it now, because I feel like, I probably ruffled feathers. I could have, maybe won some more people to my cause had I not been so kind of brash with stuff and kind of like, in your face with it. And there's that old saying that, you attract more flies with honey than vinegar, and that's something I've had to learn, unfortunately, the hard way, is like, it's when you're passionate and you're, it's easy to let passion turn into, frustration and aggravation and anger with people that are attacking, you for trying to be better or trying to, it's easy to go down that road mentally where, screw those guys. Well, here's the thing. Those are your guys, those are your people. And, they may not agree with you. They may not like you for what you're doing, but ultimately, you gotta try to, if you want to win them over, you're going to do a lot more with just walking the walk and not talking so much. You know what I'm saying? There's, it's just let your actions speak and let your words be few, because at the end of the day, like I said, it's your actions that are ultimately going to win respect and win credibility and win people over, not your words. People, words are a dime a dozen, right? If I talk one way, but my actions don't back it up, right? If there's no congruence with what I'm saying and what I'm doing, right? I can't preach brotherhood if I'm not practicing brotherhood, right?
Right.
I can't preach preparation if I'm not spending the time to prepare myself, right? And so it is a big difference, though, when you go out into these conferences. Like I said, most of these guys are paying their own money, their own time. They are the 1%ers. So it's easy. Like, it's actually easier, I think, to teach in that environment, because most of those guys are hungry. They're eager. They're hard charging. They are the type of guys that they're your people, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? As far as, being of like stripe in mind, of wanting to train, wanting to better themselves. Right. So, you got to understand in your own organization that people tend to be a little bit more reluctant. And you're going to have haters no matter what you do. You're going to have haters. Anytime you step out of your comfort zone and do something that is bigger than yourself, you're automatically going to have a target on your back, because it makes people uncomfortable. It makes certain people that are insecure in their own skills, abilities, knowledge, whatever. It makes people uncomfortable, and it makes them, unfortunately, a lot of people, the instinct is, human nature is it's the monkeys in a barrel thing, right? I'm not letting him climb ahead of me. I'm going to pull him back down. Right. Yes. And it takes a real, a bigger person just to hold their head high and not react to that. Right. And to reach down and pull them up, and that's, it takes a lot. And I can tell you that I've failed sometimes in that. There's times where I've lost my cool with people because they've aggravated the hell out of me. But I can tell you that you don't really gain anything. Yeah, you told them, but you may have proved your point, right? But what you did is you turned that person off from that idea, that concept of training, maybe even, forever. And that's not a good place to be. I think that's another thing I wish older me could tell younger me, is like, hey man,
calm it down a little bit.
Right. Just keep the passion, right? Keep the excitement, but just understand that not everybody has the same passion. Not everybody sees the job the same way. And, if you want to have the people that you can just like unload, find somebody of like mind that gets it, and vent to them, and get all fired up with them because they get it, because they're in the same boat. and not let it, just know, like, when you get that person who, is just happy to be there, like that's they maybe they come in, they do their job, but that's it. Like, they're not really trying to go above and beyond. They want to do what they have to do and then sit down and chill and watch TV. You're not going to win them over by, badgering them and verbally engaging with them every chance you get, because eventually they're just gonna be like, nah, screw that guy, right? So they're going to get turned off by that. So again, example, if they see you out there quietly just working over and over, and here's the thing, it's consistency.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be consistent, because if you're inconsistent, people see that, and you lose a lot of credibility when, you're hot, cold, right? And you're, one shift, you're all fired up about training. The next shift, you sit like a couch potato in the recliner for 18 hours and run a couple calls and go to bed, right? So it's hard. You got to hold yourself accountable, and because if you don't, they will.
Oh yeah, that's an excellent saying. If you don't, they will. They're just waiting for you to slow down and poke the bear a little bit. Oh, I thought you loved rope training. Yeah, I'm just taking a day off for a bit, whatever. Here's what it is for me, because I've people have listened to my podcast know that I went through a time for about a year or so, where I was a biggest bag of shit on the fire department. I came in, sat down, did nothing. I was grumpy. I was blaming everybody. The short story is, it's all my fault. I was just in my own way. When I realized I was in my own way, I really got back into the job again. So I'd been on, at that point, I'm just guessing, I've probably been on 19, 20 years in the fire service total. And then, so I've been on, this is my 29th year. I picked up the passion. Well, it's longer than that. But anyway, I picked up the passion again. And I was like you, I was like trying to tell everybody and share all this. And what was hard for me to realize, and it is to this day, is that people that don't train in the fire department, and they don't exercise, and they don't read the periodicals or look at some YouTube videos, they're just wrong. They're absolutely wrong. You're wrong. If you come to work and if you don't leave that firehouse the next day better than when you came in, you're doing it wrong. You just are. And so when I see that, it just goes all through me. I'm like, you guys don't understand, the citizens believe that when we get there, when they call 911, no matter what issue they got, that we're going to get them out of it. We're going to get them quick, safe, and easy. So why do we not train? Why would you not want to exercise? Why would you not want to train? Why would you not want to make yourself better? I understand the lure of sitting on that couch and watching TV and getting paid and feel like you're really sticking it to the man. Don't make no runs. I made so much money today, but they're just wrong. And that's where, going back to how you felt, you came back, you got all this passion and everything, and you were met with a little resistance. I see that. I've been there, but I still, to this day, I just look at people and you're just wrong. You're not right, and not trying to better yourself as a firefighter, because you're fat, you don't train. But so now I've got to work harder because you can't, and that might, I could go on that tirade forever, but that drives me nuts, is people don't take our job seriously. They think that we're going too much. Like, you need to slow down. You got 30 years in this job. You got plenty of time to learn that.
There's a couple, things that really just grind my gears as an officer, and little sayings and things when people say, like, it's good enough for government work, or it's just good enough, that bothers me as an officer, because that tells me that you're happy with mediocrity. If it's just always your attitude about it, it's just, or the people that come in, how you doing this morning? They've been at work for 10 minutes, and the first thing out of their mouth is, well, I'm here. Okay, well, do you got something going on in your personal life? Like, I just don't want to be here. Well, you are here. And, for this 48-hour shift, we run 48-96. For this shift, I need you to be engaged here, right? I'm not asking, and this is the thing. I tell everybody that's ever worked for me, I'm not asking you on your days off to be passionate about the job. Well, I don't, I would love for every one of you, everybody that ever works with me, I would love for you to want to read Fire Engineering Magazine, or, go to Firehouse Expo, or go to MAFC, or, go to H-Rock and do stuff on your off time to be engaged and be better. But ultimately, I can't control that, right? I can't control, once they leave the firehouse, they're not on my watch anymore. But what I can control is what we do in that 48 hours on duty. Mm-hmm. And our attitudes. And I'd tell you right now, I can tell you straight up, man, I have met some really talented firemen that have shitty attitudes. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, I'd rather have a less talented fireman with a great attitude, with a can-do attitude, than the most talented guy in the world with all the certifications and training in the world that has a crap attitude. Because you can teach skills, you can sharpen skill sets and knowledge base. Obviously, everybody's got varying degrees of ceiling of abilities and knowledge and stuff. But for the most part, skills and abilities and knowledge can all be imparted, right?
Right.
That's stuff that we can work with. But what I can't change is your attitude. I can tell you need to have a better attitude, but ultimately every individual person controls their own attitude and outlook on the job, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you get somebody that's that bump on a log attitude, that's good enough for whatever. If you have people with that attitude, that what I call the minimalist, that just want to do the bare minimum and take it easy the rest of the day, what you end up with, it's like pulling teeth, right? Because no matter what you try to do, ultimately they've got to make a decision in their own mind to, be engaged, to be plugged in. And so, what you run into is, as an officer, one of the biggest traps that I ran into was, I think as a young officer, was like wanting people to have the same zeal and passion. And you want all your guys to be plugged in like that all the time.
Right.
And I had to come to grips with the fact that some guys are just not going to go down that road. And, and it sucks. So you kind of have to find that expectation level, right? Set those expectations. These are what our expectations are. And I believe those expectations should be high. However, you got to be realistic when you set expectations and understand from the point of, there's a point where there's department expectations and standards, and then there's my own personal expectations and standards. And you can push that to a certain degree, but understand that you do kind of step out on a limb when you do your own personal stuff. I guess what I've had to learn is that, the department administration may not back you 100% on that. And really what it comes down to is like, what is, you got to figure out how much, what the culture is in your fire department and what the fire chief expects, what the administrators expect, what your battalion chief, as a company officer, what your battalion chief expects, because ultimately, that's really the standard you're going to be held to, and they're going to be held to that has any kind of weight and teeth. And so the rest of it, when, you want guys to come up to an even higher level, that next rung, hey, these are the department minimum standards, but we want to go beyond that. Mm-hmm. That comes down to just straight up motivating people, right? Like, giving people, hey guys, let's be better than just the minimum, right? But what that takes is it takes, week after week, month after month, year after year of consistency. It takes them seeing you be the first one up to clean and you're the captain, you shouldn't be doing that. To this day, I have no problem cleaning toilets. I have no problem washing the truck. I have no problem, when it's time to train, I want to be the first one up. And what are you trying to do? Well, I'm just not to toot my own horn and make myself look better, but I truly and firmly believe the best officers I've ever personally worked for in my career have been the guys that got it. They understood that they're company officers leading in the trenches, right? And so they're kind of that whole, we were soldiers. Mm-hmm. Remember what Mel Gibson said about the officer being the first off helicopter, right? Yeah,
first foot on the ground in the beginning and the last one off at the end.
Yeah. And I believe there's a lot of parallels between that mindset in the military and the mindset in the fire service. I truly believe that we have to be, we have to truly set our whatever standard we want. We have to live that standard, right? But also understand that it may take some guys some time to, you almost have to find a happy medium where, because it can, guys that are not like that, man, what ends up happening is you just get constant friction because they are just not happy that they're doing. So there's a balance, and it's like, how do you find the way to kind of get through to them? And what I found is honestly is best is just quietly setting that example, because what happens is you get up and start, like, let's say we get done with dinner, right? And I'm the first one up and I start cleaning. I don't have to say a word, because the other, I might have that one bump in the log that maybe doesn't want to do it, but the other guys get up and, hey, the captain's cleaning, they start cleaning. Guess what that guy's going to do?
He's going to get up clean.
He's going to get up and clean, because otherwise they're going to wear his ass out.
Oh yeah.
Right. I don't have to say anything.
So a while back, I was, I love reading about leadership, specifically fire department leadership. And this was a couple of years ago. I couldn't wrap my head around a starting point for leadership. I just couldn't. I would read Salka, Lasky, I liked Sergey's book, but everybody had such a different outlook, right? All were correct. All were fantastic. But what I was searching for was a starting point, and I couldn't figure it out. So then it's like I dwelled on it all day long, and I'd go to bed and I'd think about it because I just felt like there was something missing, and it hit me. And to your point, it's exampleship. So I wrote an article about it called Exampleship, and it's basically if you want to be a good leader, where's your starting point? You want to be a good example. So I made like the pyramid of exampleship, and it has pride, training, and physical fitness, which a couple of years later, I decided to do this podcast based on that. That's how invested I am in that, because now that I've kind of looked at that, and it's kind of, to your point, I'm first one to get up and clean, or I'm first, I'm gonna do toilets. That's good exampleship. That's good leadership. So now when I read Salka or, Josh Chase or Lasky, any of those guys, it's so much easier for me to see their perspective if I filter it through my starting point, right, which is pride, training, and physical fitness. So yeah, that's fantastic. You got to think about this. You see an out of shape, lazy captain, right, that doesn't like to train and bashes on the administration. What example is that setting, right? He's got a young, hungry guy. What's that look like? How's it? That just drives me crazy. Drives me crazy in the firehouse.
No, brother, I agree. And this is one of the things that, you mentioned kind of bashing on the administration. And I can tell you that over the last couple of years, I have made a concerted effort to not go down that rabbit trail when guys start, breaching the subject of, I don't mind talking about issues. As long as we're offering, constructive thoughts and ways to possibly solutions to a problem. Right. Because I feel like that's, guys need to vent sometimes, man. They just get stuff out there. But what I'm really careful of as an officer, and even when other officers start to go down that road, I don't try to engage with them. Like they'll start talking shit about, administration and leadership and all this stuff. To me, you are undermining, and it took me a long time to figure this out, but you are undermining your own leadership by talking shit about your leadership, right?
Yes.
And when the guys think, when they see that you're willing to, when you stop being positive and trying to be, and try to move them forward, if you will, and they see that you're willing to embellish the haters and the naysayers and the people that want to, what example are you setting, right? When you are willing to go down that road of, screw that chief, he's a piece of crap, and he wouldn't know leadership if it bit him in the ass and all this stuff, and the fireman banter, right? I think there's a point, like as officers, like if the guys are having that conversation, like that's one thing amongst themselves, but we're promoted in those positions to set the tone, right, to set the culture on that crew. And I think that you hurt the culture on your company and on your shift. And when you start going down that trail, and to the point where, like, I've had that conversation with other officers, like, man, we can't talk like this. And, if we want to go in the captain's office and a couple captains have it out about issues, that's fine. But I refuse to have those conversations. There's some conversations that just don't need to be had in front of the firefighters that are out there, right? Because like you said, you get this guy that's hungry. Let's say you get this 6-month guy. He's been on the department. He's hungry. He wants to train. He don't know anything, but he just loves being on that big red truck, man. He loves it, right? And he's hungry and he's eager. And you sit around the kitchen table every night for six months, and all you do is talk about how shitty the department is and how shitty the leadership is and blah, blah, blah. Eventually, he's going to get really, he's going to have one of those things in his, where he starts to believe some of that shit, right? And he starts joining in when he gets more time on.
Yeah, exactly.
And then now you got a guy that's disgruntled from like year number 1 because it was instilled in him because those conversations were allowed to happen. And he saw his officer, his leader, doing that. And guess what he's going to do? He's going to follow suit, and he's going to start doing it himself. And now you got a guy that's, 1, 2, 3 years in that wants to sit in the chair all day and bitch about everything that happens, because that's just what we do. And, it just kills culture, man. It kills morale. And so for me, like I said, man, that's been one of the lessons I've really tried to incorporate over the last couple of years. When guys start going down that road, try to redirect the conversation, right? And when other officers start going down that road, don't embellish them. I've got to the point now where I'll just look at them. And most of the guys that I work with, like, if I just start looking at them and they know,
they know the look.
They get the look like, hey man, like, I'm like, hey, maybe we don't need to have this conversation with the crowd that we have, and that's a hard thing to come back from. I feel like, company officers, especially, set early on in people's career, right? That first year have such a big role in like I said, I was very fortunate. My first captain was all about tradition and pride and ownership, and he was engaged. He was, family guy, and all the things that, the qualities you look for in an officer that I look for and say, man, that guy's a leader. He had them. And I was so blessed, because I'll be honest, that was when I got kind of off track and got complacent and kind of got disgruntled a little bit and fell into the rut. When I got that spark back, where I reverted back to and what I wanted to be like.
That captain?
I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
And so as crazy as it sounds, like I backtracked, 8 years in my mind, and was like, what, that guy, he had something going on. And I look back and I was like, man, I really appreciate that, because that instilled the kind of stuff that I want to be, the substance that I want to have in my own career, in my life. And, guys got to understand, like, leadership is so much more than, and I hate the fact that, I feel like leadership is it's an elusive topic, right? Because people always like, when you see it, and leadership obviously transcends rank. You can be a leader in the backseat. You can
Absolutely.
be, and there's 100% informal leadership is a real thing. But I think that, the problem with leadership is, people who have leadership skills, what is leadership? It's influence, right? One of the traps that officers have to, fall into, or even just guys that are natural leaders by, because I'll be honest, man, there are people who just, for whatever reason, they just get it. They just understand, like, it's about people, and they get it, and they naturally gravitate in those positions. But I think one of the traps that we got to be careful of is we have to understand that there's a fine line between leadership and manipulation.
I don't think I've heard that before, but you're right.
So what is the difference, right? So, manipulation is influencing people too, right? Manipulation is getting people to do what you want, right? But what's the difference between leadership and manipulation? It's the motive behind it. Leadership is getting people to achieve a common goal for their good, for the good of the organization, for the good of the citizens, right? It's for others. Manipulation is getting people to do what you want for you, right? For your own agenda, for your own
Wait
objectives.
a minute. So my wife isn't a leader then? Huh. I'm gonna have to talk to her about that. That makes perfect sense. Me and Ashley gonna have a little talk tonight.
yeah. Man, I tell you, my wife's probably, she's looking around the corner like, what are you talking about? Your wife's name is Ashley?
Ashley.
Yeah, mine is too. It's crazy.
Yep. Ashley, and that's what I call her.
Easy to remember.
She's about this tall, so
yeah.
I'm still terrified of her. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah. Well,
Dynamite's only like that big, so
I was gonna say. I mean, I've had many an ankle torn up by a Boston Terrier. Just saying they could be feisty too. So, that whole concept, man, with leadership though, is like, man, it's so easy to blur the lines. And I've actually been, and I'll confession, I've been guilty of fallen in the trap of trying to influence people for my own agenda.
Sure.
And I go back to, in Tallahassee when I was, got that spark again, and I'm trying to get these people to see my point of view. Right. But where a lot of the resistance came, where I kind of fell short, was I was trying to manipulate the way they saw things, because I wanted them to agree with me.
Right.
And unfortunately that alienated a lot of those guys, and made a lot of more resistance because, they're looking at like, man, this guy just, he just wants everybody to be just like him and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, I didn't see it at the time. And my mind wasn't thinking that way, but I look back on it, I was like, that's exactly what I was doing. I was trying to manipulate to the point of like, we'd watch a video, right? A fire video. And I would purposely, like, we'd do a training. I'd pick out videos that prove my point. Like I would pick out videos to, that I knew that I had the best arguments for. And because I wanted to like, see, this is why we need to do this tactic and this, blah, 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 blah. And what is that though? Is it really like, am I really trying to do, in my mind, I'm like, it's what's best for the citizen, clearly, because I'm right and you're wrong, obviously. So, and that's, but that's the danger of it, man, is like, I look back and I'm like, man, I realized how I came across because I was just so ate up with it. And I wanted everybody to see this, but I was trying to do it because I wanted people to agree with me and kind of justify my stance. I wanted people to, to agree with me, not because they came to the conclusion on their own, like this is legitimately the best tactic or tool or whatever. I just wanted to justify that I was right. And, that was a pitfall. And honestly, it's something that it's easy to fall into, I guess is what I'm saying is leaders, we got to make sure that, we always keep our guys, our citizens, keep others first, put others before yourself, because that's real leadership, right? Serving other people, the leaders should be servants, right? Leaders should be people who are looking for opportunities to help other people get better, exactly. Right? Yeah. Build other people up, bring other people up. If you're tearing people down, and that goes back to our, and I'm kind of tying this together, right? So we're talking about bad mouthing administration.
Sure.
How can you bring people up when you're putting others down?
Absolutely.
At the same time.
And it's, again, I've done every bad thing that I've ever mentioned, I have done, right? And it's that realization that, wow, I'm being a piece of shit right now. So you gotta, you learn your lessons. I mean, that's how you learn your lessons, honestly. And going back to leadership a little bit, what helped me understand better was realizing that leadership isn't a science, it's an art.
Yeah.
And there's a million different ways to come at it. You just got to find your strokes,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to ask you, do you have, you got a couple books that you kind of lean on for leadership that, that you found have been helpful? Because I know I've got a few that kind of have helped steer me, and reshape the way I look at leadership.
Yes. So I have books that I actually, there's a bunch of them, but I like to find new ones. So like one, I love Jared Sergi's book, No Nonsense Leadership.
It's a good book.
Really good book. I took a lot of notes out of that. I love this book. He was actually my very first guest. I read this on the beach and I was inspired to do the podcast, which if you know me, this is not something I would do normally. This podcast thing, I don't like to put myself out there, but I remember reading this book and being so inspired. I mean, like this guy, he's putting himself out there. And then the other book that I read recently he's also from Norfolk, is Joshua Chase, Jump Seat Leadership. And you talk a little bit about, leadership transcends ranks. That's what his book is about. 5-alarm leadership, all that stuff. Those are in the pantheon, we get that. But I love right now these two books because you can go back to them. And I'll tell you another one. Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance. Mm-hmm. Love his podcast. He has a book and he never brags about his book. He never pushes it. I'm like, Corley, you got a great book here. And it's like a workbook. And the name escapes me right now. So for anybody listening, go to Firehouse Vigilance. And definitely listen to all his podcasts, but look for his book. And it's a gut punch. It's hard truths about you and leadership. And so every day you do something, you read something, think about it, and then you make little notes. I think the second or third one was not listening well. And that's one of my biggest weaknesses is I have really hard time listening and have a hard time hearing, the two difference. So he has a fantastic book. So those are my three right now. Ask me that same question in a couple months. It might be a little different.
Yeah. What about you? I feel that, man. I think, when I got promoted to lieutenant, then changed to captain about 3 years ago. I really started looking in when I went to conferences, trying to sit in on leadership classes and Cause I realized like, I really need to, dial this in. And cause I made some mistakes, man. I have early on. And I still make mistakes. I mean, but I think for me, there's been a couple books that really, in the last couple of years, kind of, I guess, helped me kind of dial in a little bit more the way I think about stuff. And one of them is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mm-hmm.
Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
Very insightful book it's not written by a firefighter, but it's a very insightful book into human nature and how people think and want to be treated. And, and man, I tell you, there's some stuff in there. It's just really, really powerful. Like you step back and realize like, damn it. Like I've been doing it wrong, all along. Like and there's some really great examples. I'm like, he's right. And, everybody wants to feel respected. Everybody wants to feel important. Everybody wants to feel, and when you make people, when you treat people with respect and you treat people, it goes, I can tell you, man, it's hard for firefighters because here's the thing, like we're a lot of type A personalities, right? We're, right. I've come up with several officers, my way or the highway, like this is the way it is. And it's easy to get wrapped up in that autocratic, like, dictatorship mindset. And that it has its place. Fireground, like there's no exceptions. Like, hey, look, when I say you got to do something, we got to do it. Like we got to do it now. Like stuff's got to get done. So that autocratic style of leadership has its place, but in the firehouse, 90% of what we deal with in the firehouse is people issues, right? It's right. Personality issues. And I think one of the hardest things for me to realize was, especially as an officer, like you may not always be the most popular guy in your crew, right? And the guys may not confide in you on every little thing because, you're the captain now, whatever. They're going to talk amongst themselves on stuff. And you got to be okay with that. Mm-hmm. And you got to be okay with, some guys are just going to, you're going to get assigned a crew that, you may have one guy that you just really get along well with. And another guy that's like, you're oil and water and you got to figure out a way to make it work. And you got to be okay with that. Cause they used to eat at me. I wanted to be liked, man. I want to be, you want to be liked. You want to be, you want to be the guy that's, hey, the officer is one of the guys high fiving. But at the end of the day, and Chief of ELO, Full Contact Leadership, he wrote a book and he teaches a class on it. And I was fortunate enough several years ago in MAPC to sit in that class. And I sat, he had like 4 classes that I sat in all 4 because I was just like enthralled by the simplicity, but also just the finesse, of leading people and knowing when to be firm, knowing how to give tough love when you need to, but at the same time, not being, so rigid that you can't show emotion and show, and just all these different concepts, things that I'd struggled with, right? Things that, I also struggle with listening. I do. My mind goes a million miles an hour all the time. And I've had to I'm still working on it to actively listen. Like give it some time, listen to what they have to say and actually try to see from their point of view where they're coming from.
Right.
And not just assume.
Take time to process what they're saying. Yes. Don't just react.
Right.
Brother, same. That is, there's 2 things that are my weaknesses that I think are bad is that. And then I'm just a beautiful man. And that when the package is just pretty, nobody cares what's on the inside. I found that out the hard way. My wife is a very lucky woman. She's a very blessed woman. Wait. Okay. She didn't hear me. Never mind. I know she didn't listen to this podcast. You're exactly right.
Edit it out.
The beating I get, I'll just fix that in post.
Next podcast, you'll be wearing a patch on your eye or something.
I love you, sweetie.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let me tell you about me. I do like to read. I hate reading. College has ruined me for reading and writing. Absolutely.
I feel it, man.
Yeah. Oh God.
I wrote two term papers yesterday and about wanted to gouge my eyes out.
Oh my God. I see why people drop out of college. I totally do. I'm like, fuck, if I could write one more paper, but I do enjoy reading fire department stuff. I like reading articles and stuff like that. I'll read articles 9 times out of 10. It'll be like, oh, that's really interesting. Okay. It doesn't really apply to my department. And I'm kind of going back to what you said, like when you met Sean and you guys were like, wow, this is cool that this works for, New York, but it's a little bit different for us. And that's where your podcast and stuff came from. But I read your article, and your article is solid gold money. I read it twice, like back to back. I'm like, damn. So for those listening, I got it written down right here. It's the long and short of it in fire engineering. I tell you what, it's one of the most scalable approaches to search and fire attack. So here's what I took from it, right? Like, so let's say you don't have 40 people showing up, and you don't have, your truck, you don't have a truck company, or maybe your truck company's going to be right there. You have a great idea on how to do dual roles and still accomplish the same task. Okay. I may be butchering it. I apologize for that, but it's a fantastic article. Tell us a little bit about the long and short of it.
Yeah. So, several years ago, and it's not a new tactic per se. There's a lot of guys, that have used a variation of it. But no one's really, I guess, done a really good job of, you'll hear it called the engine search or whatever. We're teaching new guys this tactic, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm out there, and we got a new hire class, and we're teaching this, and, I'm trying to explain this concept of, I want you to search off the line, but I don't want you over here 30 feet away, deep on the other side of the house, away from the fire. Like, we still got a job to do with that attack line, and that's to put the fire out. But what we found is, like, we're running minimum resources a lot of times. We may only have, 3 dudes on an engine showing up, and we got a couple minutes before we get another rig on scene. That's pretty typical in my jurisdiction, where, we run single unit houses. We don't have a bunch of, stacked truck companies on top of the engines and stuff. And so what happens is we have these delays in getting resources initially, right, over the course of a few minutes. And so you'll have an engine pull up on a fire, and, clearly you can see where the fire, especially if you know where the fire is at, let's go get it. Right. And so, one of the things we started finding is, like, hey, we want to get these victims out of this environment as fast as possible. Right. And so I'd heard several people, talk about engine searches. I've trained on it for several years leading up to this, and different variations of it, from, going to the fire, put the fire out, and then start searching backwards off the line to, just kind of search just immediately around the line as you go. And so what we started looking at was ways to kind of enhance that tactic, right? To make it easier to explain to the new recruit that we're teaching this tactic to. Mm-hmm. We wanted the most bang for our buck, right? We want to clear as much area as we can while still moving the line and putting water on the fire, right? So we started looking at it as, like, hey, if you look at a typical house, it's, if you cut it into quadrants, right? That's what we typically do. Even when we do ICS, what do we do, right? We break it into quadrants, A, B, C, D, and we kind of draw those lines, if you will. And we started looking at the concept of searching off the line, and we're like, well, look, it doesn't make sense for us to be 40 feet in a back bedroom on the other side of the house when we got to move this hand line. We got 2 guys on the line, right? Maybe 3 guys on the line now, because we're a little bit better on our staffing. But the point is, we wanted to be able to clear as much area as we possibly can as we're going, right? So that if we do find a victim, we give them the very best possible chance of getting out of that environment as quickly as possible, right? We don't want to leave them for a primary search that may be 3 minutes out to be initiated, then another 2 minutes for them to find the victim. If we got a victim that we can pull out quickly, let's get them out. So it was kind of one of those things where we started, looking at it. We're training out there one day. We're out in the burn building, and we're doing drills and stuff. And I was like, you know what? You basically got a long side and a short side. This hose line is going to go in and go to the seat of the fire, right? So we're going to go in there, and we're going to put the fire out. But I was like, if you got a good nozzleman, he can hold his position and even move hose. A lot of times, if we put enough hose at the door, right, he can just kind of feed that in, and that allows me as an officer, or my irons guy, as he gets in and feeds a little hose in that doorman, to come in and start searching. And so what we wanted to do was, like, hey, as we go, let's clear the short side of the building, being the smaller geographical area that's cut off by that hose line, right? So if I go in my article, I use an example of a back bedroom fire, in the Bravo Charlie corner of the structure, right? So we go in and we make that left, and we start turning. And so, you look at the line, the hose line literally creates a kind of a short side of the building, which is inside on that Alpha Bravo corner, right, to the Charlie side. And then you have the whole rest of the house, right? So like probably about 30-40% of the house, maybe tops, is inside of that short side, and the whole rest 60-70% plus is over there on the long side, right? We can't do two jobs at once per se, from the standpoint of it's not practical for us to like, hey, one guy goes and, you just take that hose line back there, rookie, and put the fire out. I'm going to go on this other side of the house and search, because that goes against obviously accountability. I can't keep any kind of accountability with my guys. And if I do find somebody and I'm by myself and they're big, what am I going to need? Manpower, right? So our thought was like, hey, if we search as we go on the short side and we find somebody, I can get my irons guy, I can get my driver, whoever, to come to, our drivers are pretty proactive. If we don't have a second unit on scene, most of the time the driver's putting his air pack on, just in anticipation of like, hey, we may have a rescue situation where I got to hand a victim out or something. So the premise behind it, like I said, though, is kind of quadranting off that building. And as we're going to the seat of the fire, those rooms and those areas that are immediately off the line on the short side, we're kind of sweeping as we go, with the hopes of, if we find a victim, we get them out quickly and they can at least get to fresh air, out of the heat, out of thermal insult. And the nozzle man stays on the nozzle, unless it's just one of those things where like we just, some weird audible where we just, hey, give me a hand real quick. The fire's in check. You've knocked it back. Give me a hand to get them out the window or something. But typically the nozzle man stays on the nozzle, and the officer and or the irons guy or the driver will basically facilitate pulling the victim out the rest of the way if we find a victim. And what that does is we're getting a knock on the fire, right? We're making forward progress with this hose line and putting a line between the victims and the fire. And what it allows us to do is to clear, 30-40% of this house. So when we do get that second unit that shows up on scene, we can tell them, hey, short side is clear. So that crew that's going in for primary search, they're not going to worry about anything from that hose line in to the short side. They're not going to search it.
Right.
It's already been searched. It's
brilliant. It's brilliant. It's an easy system, easy to communicate, easy to understand, and easy to tell the second end, hey, I got the short side. And you have an actual physical, tangible a line in the sand, basically. The short side. Physically, I'm going to go this way. Now, I got to ask. So I love the article I love the video, but I got to ask, who let you go in their house to drag a line through a nice house? Now, I will say this. It has to be a firefighter. I already figured that out, because the first room that was searched was a kid's room, and it had a toy chest or something like a fire truck.
Yeah.
I know it's a fireman's house. Who said, hey, come here with that charged line and walk through our house?
So that was my house. My wife wasn't home when we started. She showed up as we're getting ready to pull this hose to the house, and she's like, "What you doing?" I was like, "Hey, here, hold this camera."
Oh, so she gets filming credits.
Right. So I basically kind of just winged it. I did it, and kind of asked for forgiveness afterwards. So,
hey, sweetie, what's going on with that whole fire? Is our house on fire? What's going on? Just playing. Yeah. That's awesome. I love the article, man. I really do. Matter of fact, I plan on teaching that exact thing to my guys, just because I think it's brilliant. It's scalable. That's what I like. So, yeah, you could have a truck company come in at the same time, and you still could be checking the short side, and they could be going to the long side.
Precisely.
It is such a good, and you know what? Every time I learn something like this, it just blows my mind. I'm just like, how come we never thought about this before? Just like when you take a thermal imaging camera, if you turn it 90 degrees, you get to see more. Right. You know what I'm saying? That whole time I've been holding that thermal imaging camera like this, and then I get taught like this. I'm like, holy shit, it was in my hands the whole time. Why did I not think about this? So I kudos to you, brother. I really like it. I'm going to wrap up here a little bit.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed this. This has been an excellent podcast for me. I've really enjoyed it. Man, you've got so much going on. There's almost no starting point, no ending point with you, It's like, let's jump in the middle and see where we go, because you do so much. And I hope you're not going to slow down either. Hope you're going to keep churning out that good stuff, more articles, more teaching, stuff like that. You got that on the horizon?
Yeah. Got another article was submitted a couple weeks back, and waiting to see what happens with that. Sounds like it's got positive review from the initial first glance. So waiting on that. We got the North Florida Fire Expo coming up in March, so we're full steam ahead right now, working on that. That's it's gonna be a lot of fun. Anytime you get to train, for 3 days with a bunch of like-minded brothers on the beach, not a bad place to be.
No, I was kind of hoping to come down there and maybe do something, because I've heard good things about it from people that have gone down there, and I would love to go down there and check it out. I'd love to.
Oh man, we'd love to have you, dude. It's fun, man. It was that kind of happened I never set out to run a conference. I really didn't. My buddy Mike and I we wanted to raise money for a member that had cancer, and so we put this conference together just on a whim, started on a napkin, and we did it, and it was such a huge hit. And guys like, you got to do another one. You got to do another one. So here we are 3 years in, and it's like a whole nother animal all to itself.
Oh, it's gained a lot of traction in a short amount of time, don't you think?
Yeah, it really has. The feedback we had was
get heavy hitters. I mean, you got heavy hitters, good classes on the beach, like you say, especially when people have been cooped up. March comes around, you're like, I'm ready to go down there. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, we're pumped.
Do you got any sneak peeks of what we can expect this year at your conference?
Expo? Yes, sure. So a little different format this year. The overall format's the same, being, first day's big room lectures. Second day, you'll have a choice between lectures or hot classes. And then third day's still all hot classes, but we've added several training sites. I think we're up to 7 training hot sites now. Wow. which is awesome, in 3 different counties around us. So very, very excited about that. We've added a lot of hot classes this year. One of the things we're really excited about is we got a bigger venue. It's nicer, and it's just immaculate. It's one of the newest hotels on the beach over there. It's about 3.5 times the size of the facility we were in the first 2 years. So still on the beach, next county over, but we're excited because of the space. We're going to be able to do some stuff we haven't been able to do before, which is we're having a huge pool party, like luau themed pool party, the first night after classes. We're going to have bartenders at the tiki bar. They got a big tiki hut at the pool. And we're going to have that going on. We're going to have a DJ with some live music, big pool party, and it's all on site, so nobody has to leave or go anywhere. In the past, we've had to kind of shuttle people to different socials just because we didn't have the space to do a social on site. So that was a big deal. And then another thing that we've added this year that's completely different is we're doing a vendor show on the second night. For all of our sponsors and vendors to be able to have a couple hours for people just to mingle and kind of get to see the spread, because we want to show them we appreciate them. It takes a lot of money to run something like this. And so for us to be able to do a vendor show is a big deal for them to kind of really get their product out there and let people see it and play with it. So more expo style, like that was one of the things that we couldn't do the first couple of years. We just didn't have a space, like a floor space to really spread out and do like a vendor show. And so that's new. So the first couple nights will be all on site. As opposed to going off site like we have. We are working on a fireman bash the last night at a local Irish pub down the road, about 10 minutes.
Nice.
Absolute stellar view on the harbor in Destin. And it's set to be just incredible, man. It's going to be a blast. Old school Irish pub. Very, very cool. They brew their own beer, which is cool. Nice. And just a great overall venue. So we're excited about those. We're really excited we've added some stuff that I think is going to bring a lot of benefit to the student, we're going to have multiple lecture rooms going on day 2 that they can just choose which room they want to go to, right? Just figure out, hey, this class sounds good. So they're not stuck in one room all day. If they, they can take whatever classes they want, because they're 2-hour lectures. But they can kind of pick which room, what class they want to go to. And so we've adopted a little bit of that from MAFC, how they kind of have the format like that. And I think it's going to be a big win for the student, because they're going to be able to kind of pick and choose those lecture classes they want to sit in, instead of only having, 1 or 2 options on the second day. And then the other thing, like I said, adding those hot sites has been a big deal for us, being able to expand from 4 hot sites to to 7 hot sites this year has allowed us to bring in some really great talent. I mean, we got, guys that from engine work, Jay Bonifield, coming in. I mean, we've got Jonathan Brumley, some of these guys that are real big engine guys doing engine work. We've got truck stuff, we got search stuff, searchable versus survivable. Of course, Sean will be there. We've got guys, we've got instructors from 17 different states coming to teach, really from leadership stuff with Chief Avilo. We got, Rick Lasky, Mike Galliano, guys like that are coming back, that it's just stellar guys that, all the way down to guys that are, the up and comers, guys that are cutting their teeth, right? The guys that are really, starting to shape the modern fire service, guys that are kind of taking that torch, right? And so we've got a good mix. We've got a really good mix of tactical stuff, leadership stuff, engine stuff, truck stuff, rescue, RIT. We got several really, really badass RIT classes. Eric Allen, the guys from the FAST team or Fast Rescue Solutions, is putting on a RIT class. We've got, Basil and Herbie and Rob and those guys from National Rescue Consultants are putting on a RIT class. I mean, we got an extrication class.
Is that Rob Blassetti?
It's Rob Ramirez.
Ramirez, okay. I know Blassetti works with Basil too. I just wonder if it's him.
But yeah, just like I said, a really good mix. We're really excited about the format. I think we talked to the hotel, so just a little sneak peek. This will be the last year we do a 3-day format. It's going to be going to a 4-day format next year with 2 lecture days, 2 hot days, to give the students as much bang for the buck. Because one of the things we did run into, and it kind of became self-aware, was, a lot of the students are like, oh man, I really want to hear this guy speak, but then I also want to take this class. And I'm like, I'm conflicted. So by separating them out and doing it over 4 days, it'll give us a little bit more time for students to, get the best of both worlds, if you will. And then also allow us a little bit less of a time crunch to where we can spread out and maybe they can have a free evening to go, do whatever, hang out on the beach, whatever. Because last year, especially, we've really pushed for the family side of things. Like, hey, bring your wife, bring your kids. Our goal is to make it where people, want to come in. Like you said, it's March, beginning of March. Like, it's been cold all winter. Like, people want sunshine. They, the beach, and they want to come. They want to come out but one of the things that we've had so many questions is like, hey, is it family friendly? Can I bring my wife and kids? And I tell everybody, man, yeah, if you want to bring your wife and kids, by all means, like, come enjoy. We want the expo to be so much more than just a training conference. We want it to be the full experience from the minute they step off, out of the car or off the airplane to the minute they leave. We want them to walk away like, man, that was a hell of a time. That was a great experience from top to bottom. And so I think that's one of the things that for us we've been very careful. We want the instructors and the students alike to feel welcome, like their family. And even though we're growing, we've our motto is passionately pursuing excellence through blue collar fire training, right? That's kind of our motto for the expo. And that's what we want it to be. We want it to be an excellent experience, but it's founded and grounded in our roots as blue collar firemen, and everybody that teaches there, it's amazing. These guys that got, could easily have an ego, right? You got guys that got 40 plus years on the job. Some of these guys, that have written books, that have done podcasts, that teach at FDIC, that are like heavy hitters, right? Right. And it's amazing. They come down and it's just like family. Yeah. And they want to get dirty. They want to, they want to be firemen too. They have a, blast with it. And I always tease Anthony Avilo, he got done teaching last year. And like an hour later, I'm like, where'd Anthony go? I look out, he's on the beach. He's got his dude rag on, man. He's out there playing in the water. He come back up with a drink in his hand, pop in, listen to some more lecture for a little bit. And I was just giggling to myself because I'm like, here's a guy that he's just having a blast. He's having an absolute blast. And so, but I was like, that's the kind of the vibe that we want to have. That's the kind of, we want guys to come in and be like, man, I really felt welcome. I really felt like it, the training was awesome, because we want the best training we could possibly bring for the best price point. Right. But we also wanted them to enjoy the other elements of what makes the conference. In my opinion, what makes a great conference is the networking, and it's the brotherhood, and it's the stuff that goes with it. It's working hard and sweating together, but then having a beer that night and just catching up with somebody from across the country that you may have never got another so many people, you form relationships and friendships with guys because of stuff like this. And that's what in my opinion, is something that is very important. We want guys to build relationships. We want the instructors to be accessible, where they talk to, the students and mingle, and we all just have a good time. And so for us, like I said, we're growing, we're expecting, we're anticipating, well beyond what we did last year in student count. I think that, we've been very blessed to have some amazing instructors, both locally and abroad, that have volunteered their time to come down here. These guys aren't getting rich doing this stuff, man. They're not. They're doing this because they love the job, they love the craft, and it's been very humbling to see the outpouring of support from the National Fire Service, guys around the country that just that just love the job, that love people, that want to see guys get better. So for us, like I said, the growth, doing what we're doing this year, and kind of really, I think it's going to be a closer knit field than even the first 2 years, even though it's larger, because there's so much on site that we're going to be able to do, and people are going to be able to mingle. They're not going to be as spread out, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Other than the hot sites, everything else is pretty much central to that hotel, and that to us is a big deal. It's a big win. It's a big, I think it's gonna make for a really good vibe, and we're looking forward to it, man. It's a lot of work.
Is registration open already?
So registration opens the 20th, October 20th. Yeah.
And where can they find that information at?
So NorthFloridaFireExpo.com.
Mm-hmm.
All lowercase, no spaces. Yep. We got some stuff on Facebook as well. North Florida Fire Expo on Facebook. If you follow us on there, we'll have stuff posted daily, pretty much from now until registration. But it's check out the website. We got class descriptions on there, bios of all the instructors. We're working on updating all the social stuff, and kind of putting the schedule should be coming out within a week, as far as the plan of events. And the good thing about it is, guys can do as much or as little as they really want to. So, for the hard charges that want to max out all 3 days and do 2 hot days and all stuff, we got that. We got, lecture tracks and leadership tracks. And, I tell guys, like, look, you want to do lectures on day 1, take day 2, take your family to the beach, and then catch a hot class on day 3. I mean, whatever format you want to do it in, we encourage guys to come out and just participate and enjoy the brotherhood, enjoy the fellowship. We've got some amazing sponsors who have made it possible, that have made, we're going to have really, just in my opinion, top shelf social opportunities, hospitality suite, where I'm challenging the firemen that show up to drink the amount of alcohol that thing, because I'll be honest with you,
challenge accepted.
There may be a couple pallets worth of beer in the hospitality suite. I'm just saying.
So do you know if the people that sponsor me, Fire Facilities Incorporated, are they one of your sponsors?
They are not.
Do they? Is it too late to get a sponsorship in there?
No, sir.
I might give them a call, because I know that would be the perfect thing for them. So
yeah. If they're interested, man, tell them to give me a buzz. It honestly, we're still soliciting sponsors. The event, like I said, is the way we're able to keep our price so low, $199 for all 3 days.
Holy cow!
Yeah.
All right.
They're the reason why we can do it. And that's something we've been very happy that we can keep that price point low. You can't, like I said, for $200, you got 3 whole days of all the fun and fellowship and firefighting that you could ask for, with some of the best in the business. And so, like I said, the only reason why we're able to do what we do is because of generous sponsors and people picking up, helping out, and these guys that, Jay Hillis with Snap Tight was one of our first big ones this year that picked up and said, hey, I want to, go in heavy, contribute, be there. We got some returning sponsors that have just been fantastic. You look at Columbia Southern has been there since day one. We've got Bickler Longo. There are some attorneys down in Orlando, actually, but they work with our state level union, and they do like firefighter workers comp stuff. And they've been with us since day one. They're picking up a pretty hefty tab for the party. Just all these sponsors that contribute resources, tools. TNT's been there from day one, the rest of the extrication tools. These guys have been incredible, and they make it possible to deliver high-end training at the cost that, like I said, even backseat firemen can afford. And that's something we're very happy we can do. And we hope we can continue to do that for the foreseeable future. We really don't want to raise our price. We don't want to drive the price up. if we can help it. So, huge shout out to everybody that makes it possible, because it's not just Nick Peppard. I know I'm the guy that runs my mouth all the time. It is on Facebook, but I got a whole army, team behind us here, from my wife's a big part of it. Mike Hall, my best friend, the guy that helped co-founded the event, is a big part of it. I've got some guys in my firehouse that countless hours spent building props and, running errands and doing stuff. And it does take a small army. It's an undertaking. Like I said, when we got into it the first year, I had no idea what we were doing. I literally was just calling people like, hey, what do you do? How do you do this? Like, asking all those questions. And it's amazing. As a student, you go to these things, or even as an instructor teaching, until you run one, you really don't realize how much goes behind the scenes into making it successful. Mm-hmm. And we learn pretty quick, like, it's months of legwork. We start the planning process like literally a month after when we end one, we start planning
the next one.
And yeah, and we start hard and heavy, in the late fall, building props and getting all this stuff kind of set up. And it's a lot of work, but I tell you, man, it's incredible to watch come together. And when you see the final product and guys are having a good time and guys are learning, and guys come up to you on the last night at the social and they're like, man, this is awesome. This is just what I needed. It takes me back to where I was as a young fireman. And I got humbled on that call. Mm-hmm. And yeah. I went to that to MAFC and I got that shot in the arm. And I remember to this day, I remember exactly how I felt. And so when you get to be on the other side of that and offer that to somebody, and you see that guy's like, man, I was really discouraged. I was really kind of in a rut, and this kind of just got me excited again. When you hear those kind of stories and that kind of feedback, I feel like that's what makes it worth it. That's what drives. Like, when you see someone's passion for the job, you get that spark back, and you see that love for the job in their eyes again. Or you see a guy that, maybe was thinking about changing careers because he's just burned out, and then all of a sudden he's excited again and he's eager to go back to his firehouse and get into it. And it's just, to me, that's what this is all about, right? It's not about names or notoriety or any of that crap, because at the end of the day, man, like, that stuff comes and goes, right? People, 20 years from now, hell, nobody will probably remember my name, but that's okay, because it's not about Nick Peppard. It's not about, any one person, right? It's about something bigger than ourselves. And I think that's what, to me, like, that's where my passion and my drive comes from, is like, when you see other people benefiting and you see the bigger picture coming together. That's why I got my hands in so much stuff. Honest to God, that's what motivates me, is seeing those changes. They're slow. Those changes come very slowly. But when you see those changes in your firehouse, or you see that firefighter that was struggling, kind of together, right? Or you see them kind of, bridge that gap mentally. I think that, that's, as instructors, as leaders, as officers, that's what keeps me going. Because I'm straight up, man, there's days I come into work and I'm tired of shit because I'm doing 100 different things and my mind's going $1 million. And, you come in and it's like, you just want to like sit in the chair and say, screw it for the day. But then I see that fireman out there, going the extra mile, cleaning the rig, or wanting to look over a tool or tuning up a hail again, or, man, and I see that, I'm like, and it reminds me, okay, you know what, I got a job to do, and I want to make sure that I leave this better than I found it. And so guess what? Get out there, put your gear on with them, get out there and work with them. And it's amazing when you get in those funks, what a little sweat equity will do, right? A little bit of sweat with your guys, working out, training, talking shop, going to a conference and rubbing shoulders with guys that are, and you find out that we're all in the same boat, man. We all have highs, we all have lows, but we are our brother's keeper. It's our job to iron sharpens iron, right? And keep each other moving forward. And that's what it's all about, man. Whether it's training locally, holding a conference, doing a podcast, what is all this for, right? What is our purpose? And I think, brother, you share a kindred spirit. I think that I love this. I love doing these things because I think that it's just a couple firemen talking shop. This is like sitting at the kitchen table, having coffee, bullshitting at the firehouse. But what it does is it reminds so many people that maybe are out there listening, and you don't even realize they're out there listening, and they're like, man, I needed that shot in the arm, or, man, I'm going to go try that in training or whatever. And it may be just that one little thing, that one thing that you said, or I said, or someone else said, that you don't even realize it, that sparks that fire in them again, that gets them down the road another mile. And, brother, like I said, this has been fun. I enjoy the hell out of these things. Like I said, I definitely am I'm not afraid of the microphone, apparently. So my wife tells me all the time, she said, I definitely know how to talk. So,
well, you and Sean have a really good podcast. I really enjoy it. And Make Do, the Suburban Fireman. I got that right? Yes, Make Do Suburban.
Yes.
I'm enjoying the crap out of that. I can't wait. I've got to get down to the expo. I'm going to talk to fire facilities, because he is the president is actually a former firefighter. So he knows everything he does comes from that side of training and all that.
Nice.
He's very enthused. So I'll talk to him about that. I've enjoyed having you on my show, brother. You got me all, I'm just all jacked up now, man. That's why I'm going to go put on my gear and go do something outside. I can't just go straight to bed. This is awesome. You're inspiring, man. You really are inspiring. Brother, it's been great to meet you.
Yeah, brother. I thank you for having me on the show, man. This has been an honor. I've been very blessed to be here, man. And anytime that I get to talk with like-minded brothers and share a little passion, anytime, man. And that being said, I think I'm gonna have to talk to Sean, because we've both been on your show now.
Oh yeah,
I think it's only fitting we're gonna have to get you on the Make Do show, man.
I don't know what I could bring to your alls, but I appreciate it. It would be an honor. It'd be an honor, but
love to have you, man.
I appreciate it. I'm going to close that with today's podcast. It was sponsored by Fire Facilities Designers of Manufacture. I'm sorry. I'm going to try that again. So you got me all jacked up now. Talk about how your hands couldn't take your helmet off because your heart rate's going. That's what mine's doing right now. I'm just all motivated. So today's podcast was sponsored by Fire Facilities, designers and manufacturers of realistic built-to-last training structures and mobile units for 30 years. Make training count. Visit firefacilities.com for more information. And if you're listening, Fire Facilities, which I'm sure you are, I sure would love to go to that expo down in Florida. Brother, thank you very much.
Absolutely, brother.